I do want to just say we are going to be hearing tonight from Stefana Farrell, who was with the Florida Freedom to Read Project, and Lainey Haynes and Frank Strong, who are with the Texas Freedom to Read Project. And like I mentioned, they connect parent organizations across their state and focus on defending every student's right to access information and ideas while at school. And I'm going to drop links to their organization as they begin to talk. We really appreciate they've done this presentation for us once before. It's amazing. Invited them back and just want to always keep sharing information about how you guys can organize and build community and really fight back against attacks on public education in your town. So I believe Lainey is starting, so I'm gonna kick it over to Lainey.
Hello, everybody. Lainey here. I live in Texas. I actually live in Fort Worth, so the DFW area, North Texas, and we are excited to be here. So I'm one of the co-founders of Texas Freedom to Read Project, which is up on the screen right now. We kind of have a goal here at Texas Freedom to Read to, as you can read here, to support, connect, and mobilize parent and community member-led initiatives to fight for student rights. So to put it really, to kind of tell the story, we exist to help people in Texas who are seeing book banning and censorship happen in their communities. So if you live in Texas and your school district starts to pull books off of shelves, or your public library passes a policy that makes you really nervous, we exist for you to reach out to us and say, hey, this is what's going on. What am I supposed to do next, right? How am I supposed to fight this? And we came to be, so there's three of us that co-founded. It's myself and Frank, who lives in the Austin area. You'll hear from him in a moment. And then Anne, who's not here tonight, but she's in the Houston area. The three of us met each other on Twitter back before it was quite as terrible as it is now. 2.5 years-ish ago, we were fighting book banning in our own communities and across the state. And we truly stumbled upon each other just doing the same work. And as we talked to each other and as we would DM each other and chat about what we were doing, we kept asking, who's here to help? Who do you think we should reach out to? Should we call the ACLU of Texas, right? And we're reaching out, trying to find who to help us. And there was kind of an aha moment where we realized that it was us. We needed to help ourselves, and we needed to look in the mirror, and pull in our boots and get to work. And because we've done so much of that work in our own communities, we just have now this level of expertise we never thought we would have. And we are here to help other people in Texas and across the nation. So we want to talk to you guys tonight specifically about that work we do, specifically about public information requests. I don't know, Stefana, will you move me to the next slide where it talks about advocacy? I think Stefana has got our slideshow next. There we go. So we advocate at the local and the state level to protect access and inclusiveness in our libraries, right? But one of the big things we do is we utilize public records and whistleblower information to ensure censorship is properly documented. That might sound kind of funny to everyone, but if there is one thing we have learned, the easiest way to follow censorship is when someone's tracking it and when someone is recording it. So my school district is Keller ISD. I have 4 children that attend public school. And a few years ago, they started banning books at an alarming level. When they did it, they claimed to do it under the guise of parents' rights, keeping children safe. And so when they all got ramped up and when our school board was taken over, one of their promises was to be transparent with the public. And as part of that process, they created, which turns out has been a burden for them, but helpful for us, they promised to make a transparent process and to track all of the book banning that they were doing. So luckily here in my children's district, we can follow the book banning in real time. We can follow when someone challenges a book and what happens to it. And we know exactly where to go to ask for information. So that's been really helpful. And that's kind of a bit something that we always kind of recommend, that if you've got a district that is banning books or censoring things, start demanding that they are transparent and that they have a system where they're recording it so you can follow that process, right? And you can see what's happening. Because some of the scariest censorship we're seeing is when it's done quietly behind closed doors and no one knows about it. When librarians are quietly being asked to pull books off of the library catalog. So another thing we do, we participate, like it says here, in events and rallies. We reach out to people in the community. And one of the most important things we do is that we support and empower local groups and individuals in their own communities. It's really important to us that we really empower those who are fighting it. You can move on to the next slide for me, Stefana. What can you do? The average family. That's what we're going to talk about. You can move on. One more, Stefana. And one more. Okay, here we are. Start early. So one thing we hear all the time is, oh, I live in Connecticut, so I don't have to worry about this. I live in California, so this isn't a problem, right? I live in a blue state. I live in a blue district, so this isn't something I worry about. Well, we are here to tell you, you need to be worrying about it. And the best advice we can give you is right here to start early. We want all of you to go into your public libraries and your school districts and start going to school board meetings, go to find out what the process is for your public library. It might be board meetings. We don't, every community is different. Sometimes they're county libraries, city libraries, and start talking to school board members, start talking to library board members, make appointments, meet with them, ask them, what are your policies, right? What are your acquisitions policies? I would say the number one question, the number one most important thing is to ask them what their policy is for if someone wants to challenge a book, right? So find out, what does that look like? If someone comes into your community and wants to challenge a book, what does the procedure look like for them to do that? Ask questions, start reading. And if you don't have a really great policy or no one quite knows, that's what you need to dig into. Number two is to use public records process to check in. So that's what ultimately we want to talk about head on tonight, is how to gain access to public records that aren't just posted on a website, right? So we know when someone bans a book in my school district, or when someone challenges it, it's posted on a website, but it doesn't have the name of the person who challenged it. It also doesn't have why they challenged it. And that's not posted publicly, but that exists and we can request it in a public information, right? So ensure that your acquisitions policies and your challenge policies are transparent. And that every time a book is challenged or pulled off of shelves, go back and look at how the process went. Did they follow the policy? Are you able to get that information? Find out what was involved. We just saw that happen here in Texas in a place called in Montgomery County. A policy passed in this county, Montgomery County, and this policy, it wasn't for school districts, it was for a county library. And this is a wild story. This community came in and they created this policy and they said, we're going to change our challenge procedures. We have this committee that when someone challenges a book, these people get together and they read it and they decide what to do with it. Well, the county commissioner and their committee decided to change this book challenge committee, and they said, we're going to remove librarians from the process. And we're going to handpick 5 people that we think should be in charge of overseeing every book challenge in the county. And librarians cannot be involved in that process. They passed the policy. We had some people in the community who were watching the process very carefully, including some librarians who were watching the process very carefully. And I don't know if any of you saw this in the news because it got some news. Someone came in and challenged a book about Native Americans and the first Thanksgiving and early America. And it was called, what was it? The Colonization of America and the Wampong Tribe, I think is what it was. And somebody challenged this book. And this library, oh, Frank's holding it. Everybody, if you can see Frank Strong's page, there it is. Someone came in and challenged this book. And this committee of 5 citizens that were politically appointed, again, no librarians involved, this committee decided to vote to take this library book and reclassify it from nonfiction to fiction. And this policy was created that you could not appeal the decision, and the decision could not be overturned. So all of a sudden, we have this librarian who realizes, she gets this message from the committee, and they came in and they said, hey, this book, you have to pull it off of the nonfiction shelf. You have to, take off the stickers that say nonfiction. And the 5 of us are deciding this book is fiction. And we had someone in the community who saw it happen, heard it happen, submitted a public information request, asked for what happened because we needed to get it. We needed to see the documentation, right? We needed to see the proof. As soon as they got that public information request back, we did what is often our only, in a lot of places where this is happening, where we have policies in place that are horrific, where no one is listening, and we have politicians who refuse to do anything about it. Unfortunately, and sometimes fortunately, we have found one of our best defenses is public humiliation, right? When they make these terrible decisions, when we have no other recourse, we just blast it to everyone we can and say, look what they've done. And that's what we did at Texas Freedom to Read. Thankfully, we had this amazing citizen who saw it happen, submitted the public information request, and we blew it up. We sent it everywhere we could. We called the publisher, we called the author, we put it all over the internet. And what was it? I think within 3 to 4 days after it going public, the county commission called a meeting and they decided they were going to maybe change this committee and consider inviting librarians. And and surprisingly, we didn't believe they would do this. They overturned the decision and the book was placed back into the nonfiction section, which is a really big deal. And it's one of the biggest wins we've had here at Texas Freedom to Read Project. And it was because the citizens submitted a public information request. So I know that was a lot, but that's kind of a perfect example of how public information requests can be so powerful. Right now, if you look on our screen, we have something called Board Docs and Board Book. And this is ultimately how most school districts share their agendas and share their information. I will tell you, you need to find out wherever you live and whatever your school district is, you need to find out how they share their school board information and their agendas. Not everyone uses Board Docs and Board Book. And it's not incredibly intuitive, right? So you've got to find out your own school district. This is where it's going to take a little bit of work for you. You need to go in, you need to say, hey, when the school board posts an agenda for their meeting, where do they post it? Where do they post their votes? Where do they post their decisions? And it's your job to go in and find it. It might be called Board Books. It might be called Board Doc. It might not be, right? I'll just say that that's ultimately up to you. And then you have to learn how to navigate these documents. Frank and I and Anne will often talk about and joke how we've become these experts in school board policies and school board agendas. And it does often feel like a foreign language. It truly will. And it's going to take a little bit of time for you to understand what these agendas are talking about and what the policy numbers mean. But it is worth the time because when you understand that and you understand the system, you know what to look for and then you know what to ask for. I see a question that says, can you go more into detail about how you did your public humiliation campaign to make it so effective? One of the most effective things we have at Texas Freedom to Read is a lot of really amazing relationships with some incredible national organizations. So we had the direct contact information for Penguin Random House, who was the publisher. We had the direct the contact information for PEN America. That kind of a thing. So it's really about building relationships. And that's why here in Texas, we exist, that someone in a small community who doesn't have those relationships could reach out to us. So my recommendation would be you could even, if you want to reach out to Red, Wine, and Blue, right? You see it happening. Reach out to us in Texas. We're happy to help you. Reach out to Stefana in Florida. We can probably put you in contact with the right people. You can even reach out to PEN America directly on their website, and they will likely help you as well. So what you need is to find someone who has those connections. But we've also found it really successful to go to places like Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, tag your local journalists, right? Tag the people in your community, ask them for help, and if you're not hearing back from anyone and you're seeing something this horrific, keep pushing until you find someone who can tell you how to approach it. That's what I would suggest. We'll move on. Whistleblowers. So this is a really big deal. The librarians in our communities are under attack, but they're also terrified of losing their jobs. Some of them are afraid of being arrested. Some of them are being harassed. And so you've got to find a way to have an inside with some of these people who have, right? So librarians will have the inside information. They know what's happening in their libraries. They know what's happening in their school districts, but they're not allowed to speak out publicly. So here at Texas Freedom to Read, and I know Stefana has the same thing in Florida, we have a place where people can submit information or call us, contact us, and allow them to give information anonymously. And then we can go out there. So when a librarian gives us information, then we go to the school district, we submit a public, so we may have a librarian give us some really damning information, but if we share that damning information, it will out them, right? It might be clear that maybe only 2 people in the whole district knew this information. So if we share it, then it's obvious who turned it in. So what happens is we get the information and then we have to decide how we're going to get that information from another source that doesn't out our librarian. And that is often through public information requests, right? So often the way that we do it is to protect librarians, to protect their jobs, to protect their livelihoods. So when you talk to librarians, ask them for specific dates, notes, certain emails, and then we can submit an email request or a public information request that will say something like, we need all emails sent to this district's librarians from this date to this date, right? And we'll give enough of a window that it's not completely obvious what we're asking for, and it won't out a librarian, but that will hopefully get us the information we need through legal channels that won't get anyone in trouble. Yeah, be really careful. If you look at number 4 here, it says remove any of their possible identifying information from documents. You have to be really careful when you do that. Sometimes you don't realize how much a screenshot reveals, because a screenshot is your entire screen, and there will often be little names on the bottom. We've caught some people doing bad things that way, so it's been helpful when someone doesn't realize how much information they're giving up. But you need to be careful too to look for those things when you're getting information from other districts or from librarians and things like that. So yeah, we just want you to be really careful. So some of you may have heard of a Freedom of Information request called a FOIA, right? In Florida, what do they call it? The Sunshine Law, I think, Stefana, is what they call it there. And in Texas, we mostly refer to them as a PIR, or a public information request. They are all the same thing. They just kind of have different names. And that is that anything that the government does, whether it's a school district or a county government or a city government, unless it's under a very specific list of protected information, like legal things or very, very detailed information, like someone's phone number, you legally have access to that because the government represents us. They work for us. And so when you know that emails have been sent in a school district, say you know someone sent an email asking for a book to be challenged, you have a right to see that email, right? And that is what the public information or the FOIA records requests are about. You normally will do it. Every school district, every city, every state has something on their website that will tell you how to do it. So again, this is like what I said before. You have to go into your school district and you have to find out how they do it. You have to go into your county. You have to go to the website. You might need to make a phone call. Do they have a portal? Are they going to ask you to submit it through just an email? There are some places that make you download a PDF and fill it out, and it's different. We submit public information requests here in Texas all the time at school districts all across the state. And unfortunately, it seems as though every single district of the 1,200 is different from the others. So, and that you have a right to it, and you have a right to make a phone call and say, hey, how does this process work? Figure it out on the website. But that will be up to all of you individually to go really figure out how that process works. I wish we could walk you through it exactly, but they're all different. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers those important parts. I don't know if anybody has any questions, they can drop them in to the chat. I know that was a lot of information and I spoke very quickly, but we have a lot to talk about. And Stefana's going to jump in. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Stefana, it's up to you.
Thank you, Lainey. So I'll just give a brief introduction to Florida Freedom to Read Project. Just like Texas Freedom to Read, we are a parent-led volunteer organization. We are a 501c4, and we did that specifically because we knew we wanted to advocate both locally and at the state level around our policy. And the reason why we do public records is so that we can create very informative, evidence-based policy suggestions that are going to benefit our kids, our communities, and our overall public schools. So public records are really important to the work that we do, and I'm going to hop right in. The first thing that you want to do before you start submitting public records, especially if you're going to do it in multiple districts, you want to make sure that you're organized. If you're doing multiple regions, have a folder for each region. If you're doing multiple topics, maybe it's not just books you care about. Create a folder for each thing that you're kind of that you're requesting records on. I not only do regions, but then I also do the dates of the submission, or if I'm given a public records number, then I'm going to use that number. You want to create a tracking sheet for your public records. So every single time that, the first time you submit it, anytime you get an update, if there's an invoice, how much is it? Did you pay it? All of those sorts of details are important, and a tracking sheet can really make sure that you don't drop the ball. Like I said, we are a statewide. We don't have as many districts, thankfully, as Texas. So we do try to submit some things statewide, and that means sometimes we're doing 67 public records all at once. And so really having this form to keep track of it, making sure that we know, when some go unresponded to, that happens often, unfortunately, in some cases, it gives us the ability to look quickly and see where we are. And then template request emails can be really helpful. There's certain requests that we do almost every single quarter, just to check in and see if there have been objections, especially in the districts that don't publicly post a database of objections. We have about 20 that post something, and then 47 that don't post anything. So we do the same requests kind of every quarter. And so we have some templates that are just really easy, just make small adjustments and you can get them out relatively fast. When you're making your request, there are certain things that you can definitely ask for. So emails, text messages between officials, team chats, calendars, presentation, and speaker notes. If you forget to ask for the speaker notes, you might miss some really vital information, especially if, we kind of create these presentations so that they have more information on the slide, but there's often times where people put very little information on the slide and it's in the speaking notes that you get important details. Tracking sheets and reports are important, especially regarding book censorship. Oftentimes librarians are asked to actually track what they have reviewed already, and so there's probably internal documents that could really help to inform your work. Anytime that there's an objection, usually there's some sort of form that's been submitted. If there's a review, there's usually ballots or review forms that each person is filling out. And then there's usually minutes from those meetings as well. And then the other thing is guidance and memos. It's hard to always get, email requests can be very expensive. Anytime you're asking for communications, you have to be really particular about dates and keywords. But for guidance and memos, these come in really handy when you know that there's been a policy change, whether at the state level or the local level. There's usually something that has to go out to all of the people that are charged now with implementing that policy. And so a really great thing to ask for is those guidance, are those guidance and memos to get that information to see exactly how they're implementing your policy. If there's a time frame, that can always help to reduce extra information that you may not need. If there are specific people or work groups, oftentimes, there's a distribution list of media specialists for an entire district. You can do that instead of naming every single, media specialists or librarians. Our state uses media specialists. And then keywords often work to help reduce, especially in terms of emails. We like to use, if we know there's a specific book being targeted, the author of the book, the title of the book, themes that may be in there, or if there's, a recent law that the objectors are going to reference, you can put that in there. To reduce your invoices, as I said before, you can try to not ask for emails. That always helps. Reducing the amount of time that you're asking them to look for documents, at start and end date, that can help. And then if you're finding that, yes, emails are important, but you want to reduce your costs, you can ask that attachments aren't included, because oftentimes, if somebody puts a JPEG logo of a school in their signature, that's a whole other page sometimes. And so you can ask for the attachments to stay out, and that can drastically reduce. And then you can see, okay, wait, if there's an attachment in this particular document and this is what I need, you can ask for that later. That can definitely help reduce your costs. Also, be specific about your senders and your recipients. If you know your book objector's name that's hitting your county really hard or your district really hard, but you don't know their email address, you can use their name as a keyword, and because their name is often in the signature body of the email, that will help to target the people that or the information that you're looking for. Oftentimes, and it depends on your district, there are certain districts where there's a 15 or 30-minute threshold for work, and then after that they're going to charge you. If sometimes you can file so many in a quarter and then they're going to charge you. But there's oftentimes, if it extends beyond a reasonable amount of time, you might get a charge, and you can ask for a breakdown. Sometimes what I do is, let's say I'm asking for 3 different types of emails. And I want to, like, it's just way too big of a number. I ask for a breakdown and see, okay, which keyword is actually hitting the most and returning the most emails, and is that keyword really important, or should I go with one of the other keywords that has narrowed it down more? So you can always ask a few questions, try to make adjustments to your original request, and get that price down. You can play the express style game. So if you know that you do have 30 minutes of free time, you can reduce your ask down, start small, and then file another one for the additional information that you took out of the first one. And then always ask for electronic copies. That way they're not pricing, adding the cost of shipping a USB or shipping you documents. I mean, we had one that just said, no, we don't ship anything electronically, so we're going to send you copies. And it was really thick piece of mail that came through. So if you ask for electronic copies, you can usually greatly reduce your costs as well there. And then again, don't be afraid to ask for adjustments and to break your request up to help reduce your costs. A little bit of perspective is very helpful, knowing that oftentimes the person that you're asking for the records, you're speaking to in the records department, or even sometimes it's the assistant to the superintendent that's charged with doing this. They don't know the curation process. They don't know a lot of the terminology associated with library books. And so you're going to need to explain a lot. And just remember, like, that's another person on the other side of this. They're not against you. They're not necessarily trying to withhold information from you. They just need more assistance and so that they can better assist you. And so if you can do a submission in person from time to time, that can really help, get to know the people that you're speaking to. And then every school district is different, and if you know that you're actually contacting the superintendent or the associate, the assistant to the superintendent, they might have a million different things that they're doing. So you might want to look at a weekly follow-up on your public records request. Be prepared for FOIAs. They often come with an invoice for the time. On average, if you're lucky, it's 2 to 3 weeks until you get your documents. Sometimes it's faster, many times it's slower. Anytime you're going more than a month, you can start using more legal language, and we'll get to that in a second. Delivery, and then media outlets often get documents faster, and they can also ask questions without asking for documents. So if you're having a hard time getting the information that you need, consider reaching out to your local education reporter, getting them involved and having them ask questions or ask for the documents as well. And then just remember, all of your requests are public records. So somebody might eventually start requesting records of anything that you submitted via for public record. So try to be as polite as possible. Do a spell check and a grammar check before sending. Make sure that anything that you're putting in there isn't anything that you would be embarrassed of if it was public. And then if your signature usually has your phone number in it, or an email, not necessarily an email address, but your address or where you work, you're going to want to make sure that you remove that information as well, just to protect yourself. So here's a sample of an informal request, and Florida Freedom to Read Project usually does an informal request. When we first started, we put in all the legal jargon, and we found that it was not as friendly a response, and we want to collaborate with our districts. We don't want to be seen as the enemy. And so we tend to lean towards the informal. And this is just an example. It's really conversational, especially if you don't have to submit it on a form. You're submitting an email. You're asking specifically for what you need, thanking them for their time and attention. And then, just kind of establishing that first communication. The second sample, this uses the legal language, right? This is what I expect. Here's how to follow up with me. If you deny my request, here are what my expectations are. And there are a lot of people that do this and go about it this way. American Oversight is a national nonprofit, and they submit a lot of public records across the country for many different reasons from many different offices and government bodies, or two different government bodies. And they tend to use legal language, and you can actually go to their website and see what they've submitted in your area, and you can maybe see if there's information there that, oh, hey, they actually already asked for what I was looking for, and there it is. They do make their public records public, which is great. And then you don't want to forget to log the request. Anytime that you're updating your record, you want to make sure that you're also updating that tracking of those records. And that can be really helpful, especially, you know, I was really hopeful when we first started all this. I did not think I would be, 3 years in still doing this, but 3 years later, things definitely add up, and there's a lot to sift through. So the more organized you are at the beginning of this, the better long term. So. And then I think I'm handing it over to Frank, right, at this point? All right, so over to you, Frank.
Hi, guys. So I will introduce myself quickly as well. I'm Frank Strong. As Lainey said, I'm her colleague in Texas Freedom to Read Project, and I'm in Austin. You may know Austin has not been really a hotbed. Austin's independent school district itself has not been a hotbed for book challenges, but it became clear to me that a couple of years ago that the things that were happening across the state were impacting everywhere across the state. I often say what happens in one school district in Texas does not stay in one school district. It gets pushed up to the legislature and then affects everything. And I'm a teacher as well. I teach English and a couple of sections of journalism, not because I'm a journalist, but I was just the only person who could teach the class. And it became clear as I was researching the book challenges that were happening across the state that the local reporting just was not there. And this was not the fault of local reporters. It was simply the fact that the media has been gutted over the last 15 years. It's a collapsing media ecosystem, as you guys, I'm sure, are aware. And as Lainey said, I realized that the person that needed to do the reporting was the person who was curious about what was happening across the state. So as a journalism teacher, we teach our students how to do public information requests. And so I had the information, even though I had never done it. And I just started sending them out. And you get a lot of really good, important information this way. So I'm going to talk to you in these last couple of slides about what to do when things don't go well, when you don't get exactly what you're looking for. And a lot of times, it happened to me today. A lot of times you send out a request, the person at the other end doesn't completely understand what you're looking for or doesn't give you the information that you need. So you need to know how to respond to that. And as Stefana said in the last section, the most important thing to remember is that you are talking to a person. So usually I send my lead-off email is generally somewhere between Stefana's formal and informal request. It's somewhere in between. It's a little bit, it's pretty informal, but I do, kind of say the law that I'm referencing. But then after that, if in all of my interactions with the person who's responding to me, I'm as personable and friendly and cheerful as can be, assuming the best, never pretending, never, assuming that someone's trying to hide something from me. So when that happens, when you get information back that is not exactly what you were looking for and you think that there's more to learn, be kind to the person that you're speaking to, that you're emailing. Send a more informal request stating that you didn't receive what you were looking for. You might need to rephrase the request and clarify, because something that might seem really clear to you might be completely foreign to someone who does not know that you're looking for things about book challenges, etc. And you can keep going. Again, that happened to me today. Today I got a request back that was not at all what I was looking for, and so I'll just send an email tomorrow saying, hey, this isn't exactly what I was looking for, and restating my question. It's also important when you get information that doesn't have exactly what you're looking for to look for the breadcrumbs, look for the things in the documents that you do have that might point you towards more fruitful documents. So if you're looking at a presentation and it references the speaker notes or handouts, if it says, on page 3 of your handout, here's an example, and you need to see that example, then you can respond in email and saying, hey, can I get this example that's mentioned on page 3 of this PowerPoint slide presentation. Sometimes pieces of email threads are missing, so you want to look for references to other emails that weren't included, and think about emails. This often happens. If you don't ask for attachments for the reason that Stefana mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you might want to then follow up if you see an attachment that could be valuable. Okay, next slide. The other thing that happens sometimes is districts will say that they do not need to make all of the information you requested available under state law, and they will appeal your request to the Attorney General. So there is some information, as Lainey said, that is not legally subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act, and sometimes that needs to be interpreted. And so your district might send part of your request or all of your request to the Attorney General looking for a ruling as to whether or not they actually have to reveal the information that you're looking for. They are required to share with you the letter that they have sent to the Attorney General. And so you can, if you see that there's something, and this has happened to us with Texas Freedom to Read Project, if you see that there's something that's incorrect or is being misrepresented, you can respond to the Attorney General as well to bolster your case. Even in Texas with Ken Paxton, generally we have quite often they still they have ruled in our favor. So it's not always bad news if you get your request appealed to the Attorney General. Okay, next slide. Some other things to look for in the information that you do get. If you are looking specifically for book challenges, there's a lot of information in the book challenge forms that are often submitted to school libraries. You can note the reason that the book was challenged. Quite often that can be really useful if someone asked about the public humiliation earlier, but if you're going to make a case that a book has been challenged for its content, for the views that was expressed in the text, that can often be found in the challenge form itself. So it's really important to look through that. It's also very common for, if you do search for emails, if you do ask for emails, you're going to get a lot of emails often because people CC many recipients and you will get every single one of those. So it can be kind of weird to read through. Sometimes you will get 100 pages of emails that really boils down to 5 or 10 emails. So it's important as you're reading through to track the dates and make sure you're keeping an accurate timeline of when things happened and when conversations were going on. It's useful. I keep a notebook where I write down, okay, on May the 3rd, the principal of this school emailed the superintendent asking for an opinion about this book. And then the response came on May the 4th, and I just keep track of it. You can also take screenshots of the most important emails because it's really easy, especially if you're doing something like we do, where you get dozens of PIRs across multiple districts. It's really easy to lose track of what was important in that 100-page packet of information that you got. You should also make note of records referenced into your return that you could request in the future. Again, this is getting back to if you see something that could be useful but isn't included in the response that you got, that's important to check back on. And then look for clues that something isn't right, because in many of the districts where these book challenges are happening, people don't want their activities to be publicized, and they know that if they do it in email, they can be. So a lot of times you will see an email saying, hey, can you call me at this number and we can talk about it over the phone? Or can you come by later this afternoon and we can talk about it? That can let you know that something is going on that you might want to investigate further. Be sure you know what to ask for. Policy changes you can ask for drafts, you can ask for studies, presentations, memos. A lot of times I look for training materials for librarians, directives, and then be aware that different decisions are made by different people. So some decisions will be made by the board, some will be made by school leadership, some will be made by district leadership.
Thank you so much to Lainey and Frank and Stefana for coming and sharing their incredible wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate that. All right, everybody, have a really great night, and we will see you soon.